All this week, we've been connecting you to what a Biden administration may mean for the world, especially here in the Middle East, because that relationship might not be too easy to predict. In an op-ed for the UAE's The National newspaper, Firas Maksad, who's adjunct professor at George Washington University's School for International Affairs, writes, and I quote, "It would be a mistake to conflate President-elect Biden's prospective approach to the Middle East with that of Obama's." The reason that Firas, who joins us now from Washington, D.C., the reason you point that out is that you hear this so much, don't you, across this region. You know, the idea when everybody knew that Biden was running, it's here we go again. It's just another Obama administration. What do you mean by this, sir?
Becky, it's good to be with you. You are in the region. I'm sure you feel the sense of nervousness around there about Biden's election. It really comes down to two P's in my position. Personality and policy, right? I mean, these are two very different people. Obama was the outsider who came out of nowhere, came on a ticket or a promise to change Washington, D.C. And Biden is the ultimate insider. He's been in the Senate since 1973, serving on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He is knee-deep in international affairs, and he has a track record that is clearly forward-leaning in terms of intervening in the Middle East, in other places. So they're very different people. And also on policy, in an op-ed published with CNN, Biden this summer said that the nuclear agreement with Iran, the JCPOA, sort of one of those achievements of the Obama administration, will be the starting point for any engagement with Iran, but not the end objective. And he has pledged to tackle the ballistic missile concerns and also Iran's very troubling track record of interfering in the affairs of its neighbors in the region. So these are two very different people.
Yeah, and it was the JCPOA which was of such great concern to many, not least those in the region where I am here, which didn't, of course, include this sort of expansionist activity around the region, nor indeed in its first iteration did the JCPOA include the ballistic missile program. So we are yet to see, but get a hint of where he might stand with regard Iran. What we have seen under a Trump administration, of course, is the signing of the Abraham Accords, the UAE, Bahrain, and indeed Sudan, normalizing relations with Israel. And CNN has learned that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is planning a visit to the West Bank settlements next week as part of a visit to Israel and several other countries, including here in Abu Dhabi. The visit would be the latest manifestation of the Trump administration's break with previous U.S. policy in the Middle East. Before we talk about where Biden might go next in other places, how will this Trump administration be remembered, do you think, in this region?
Well, I mean, I think it will be remembered for two things, at least. One is the maximum pressure campaign against Iran, really sort of the focal point of its approach to the Middle East. And I think there is a sense in the Middle East that we're going to go from maximum pressure to maximum accommodation under Biden. And that's just not going to happen. You're going to have diplomacy, but you're going to have a robust form of diplomacy in which sanctions will continue to feature large. The second thing that I think that the Trump administration will be remembered for is, of course, these landmark accords, the Abrahamic Accords. And I think what the UAE and others in the region have done with it is that they've given Biden something to cherish. I think an incoming Biden administration would want to preserve this landmark deal. I think they would be very key on maintaining positive relationships, of course, not with Israel, but not just with Israel, but also with their key Arab allies and the UAE being amongst them, if only to preserve this landmark peace agreement.
Yeah, and certainly Joe Biden, one of the few things that he has applauded about a Trump administration was you know, some of its foreign policy, specifically alluding to the normalization of Arab states with Israel. Listen, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to have to crack on tonight. But I'd love to have you back, Firas. It's a really good op-ed that you wrote for the National, and it's one that we should explore further as the weeks go by. The Biden administration, of course, some 70 days away from being inaugurated. Thank you, sir. Biden will also inherit the much neglected